Couple quick thoughts. First, this is for the truly committed or the soon-to-be committed. The thing that you learn about when you talk about interrelated issues, and especially sustainability, is the need to be flexible. If you talk about being flexible, Sarah is the essence of this, to be able to, all the pieces with weather considerations and people's travel schedules and in and out, to be able to package something that really is rewarding and gets people thinking. Those two short films I found astounding. The way of, and maybe every decade we run into films and things that get our brains firing, to think outside the box and of what's potential rather than just dealing with the day-to-day. As a mayor of a small town, Lewisburg, the quick view, it's 3,800 people. They don't all vote, which probably is a good thing. Ultimately, there has been stability in Lewisburg for many years, and what we do is we are pulling in the same direction for many, many years. And what that does is that allows you to look a little farther out than just your day-to-day to be able to address some of the issues. So some of the things that we deal with are true sustainability issues. We have to be able to have safe places for people to walk, to bicycle, to be able to access regular goods and services without always having to feel like you have to get in a car. The concept of that solar roadway, we're dealing with one of our transportation projects that we did receive some transportation enhancement monies for. We have to cross a road, and Highways has been particularly reluctant to think outside the box, shall we say, to try and get signage so that there is a safe crossing, because it's a highway. We don't want people crossing the road. As they told me one time when we put up signs on a state road, we figured that safety was probably a good thing. We just went ahead and put a crosswalk through there and signage, and they told us to remove it. And I said, well, why is that? Well, first, we own the road and we call the shots. And I said, okay, well, beyond that, why would you not want to do that? And they basically said, well, if you put a crosswalk there, people are likely to use it. So the issue of trying to deal, what I do for a living as a mayor is I'm an arbiter. I'm a negotiator. I try and keep the ball moving in the right direction. Similar to what Sarah has done with this conference in bringing people together of disparate thinkers, people who normally are on opposite sides of the fence, to be able to try and engage them in a conversation so that we can move forward. I think that's critical. I think that is a model for how we all can move forward on the variety of issues, including energy issues. When you just grind in, as Becky was telling me earlier, a lot of times people envision people who look to have the fight rather than to accomplish anything. And when you can get beyond that and relax a little bit and draw everybody and sit everybody around a table, you can get a whole lot farther. And I think that is one of the takeaways for me for this conference, is to be able to get new ideas, but to find out access to information of people who are doing good things, to be able to then incorporate those and to engage it in an environment where people don't feel threatened and they can actually act on that. With that being said, Sarah has, similar to how she conned me into coming to this conference and to engaging this, she has conned these fine folks into joining me on stage in the midst of this challenging lighting situation, to be able to join me and to let me pepper them with questions and hopefully stir up some more thinking as we go. So, please. And I guess we have a moving microphone here for folks. You have run into most of these folks either as presenters or as exhibitors, and in your travels, I am a notoriously poor public servant in that I don't have instant recall of everyone. If I was A. James Manchin, I would know every one of your kids' names, and I would know what schools they went to 12 years ago. But not having that skill, I will plead ignorance and basically let it go at this. One of the things that I'd like to point out, since there are several folks who are award winners that you've seen their names around here, as a takeaway from this conference, I'd like to pose the question of what is it that people who are here in the next 90 days could do that would make a difference from your perspective? What specific activity could they engage in that would be helpful in terms of the goals of this conference? And please, as you do it, introduce yourself at the first time so that we're all on the same page and who you are and what you do. Who would like to lead?
Thank you. My name is Joe Sinclair. I'm a project architect for ZMM in Charleston, West Virginia. The next 90 days, I've been thinking about this. What happens when the conference is over? What do we do? A lot of people have mentioned taking small steps is the right thing to do, and I truly believe that. We can't become 100% sustainable or fully regenerative overnight. It's going to be a small step taking process. I think one of the most important things to do is to initiate the dialogue. I'm going to speak from the perspective of the designer or the architect at the project level, and I found out that if you don't initiate the dialogue, then you're never going to talk about it. And by initiating the dialogue, you've at least established a chance that something good or sustainable could come from it.
So I remember when Steve was talking that. Now, pardon me, my name's Eric Lanning. I'm with a company called Arenco Systems. We're a manufacturer of on-site decentralized wastewater equipment, and a quite substantially different approach than the standard gravity technologies and other kind of treatments. Now, I say that because it relates to what my answer is here. When Steve talked in here from the Bronx, on that, he talked about, just put one dot down and then keep putting more dots down, and the changes of what you do and how you make your changes, and just keep putting those dots down. So up the same avenue of what he talked about, the biggest thing that we fight is always, when we talk about change, the counter portion to the counter argument on that, not the counter argument, but the counter side of that, is that if you keep doing things the way you've always done them, then certainly you'll always get the same results. In the area of wastewater, that's exactly the problem we face, is things only ever get designed the way they had always been done. That is, if anything, is the battle that I fight for the last, or Arenco fights for the last 30 years. If you do something entirely different, it can have different results. And trying to get those communications across and trying to be able to have people understand those things. So the thing that grabs me is I need to be able to do this, and I do it with city council people, with land developers, home builders, with yourselves in some cases. But the thing of it is that's what I do. The thing is, I think everybody needs to clearly focus up what he had to say and say, what is it you want to make a difference in? And then go about and do something related directly to that. For those who are facing those problems in their communities that they can't afford to get wastewaters, or the solutions that are in place aren't there and it's a big problem for you, well then get a hold of somebody like myself or something, and I can tell you what your options are, and you can see if you can start communicating with somebody and letting them know there's a different way. Because there's tons of small communities in West Virginia right now trying to deal with this sewer problem. And they can't get them sewered because the cost factors are just through the roof. So if you're some of those people, you need to let somebody know there's a different way to go, and then put a dot down and get them in touch with somebody, or get yourself in touch with somebody and then see what you can do to connect them. But without that kind of things, and somebody taking some action up an avenue that you think makes a difference, then what it is the engineers that are involved that kind of win the projects are going to do things exactly the way they've always done them, and you're always going to have the same result, which is a lot of towns with no sewers and no ability to afford them.
You know what I would take away from this conference? West Virginia is basically a small city spread out over an entire state. We need to make those connections. I used to call myself a pusher. Instead of leading, I like to go back and push people to innovate and push people to make change and make connections and try to get things done. We too often look outside of our state for innovation. We look outside of our state for ideas. When we really have some of the most amazing people here doing some of the most amazing things, and we just don't know it because we don't communicate with each other. And that's why I like this conference, because it's open to everybody. Anybody can come, anybody can learn, anybody can share. And I'm hoping that this conference will spark more connections and that we can become that small city again, so that we know what other people are doing in the state and we can push them further. My name is Tom Warledge. I run the Charleston office of McKinley Associates, Architects and Engineers.
A couple things that, as far as going out and getting started on something, I think I'll just go back home and start tearing my house down. And because that solar decathlon team has kind of got me, I wish I could rebuild my house. I said the other day that our leadership and our vision in this country, in my opinion, has let us down some, in that we have not advanced in the last 40 years to where I think we should be today. But you do it one step at a time, brick at a time. You eat an elephant one bite at a time, so I think every little thing we do actually is a positive thing, and so positive things, just kind of stack them on top of one another, and so I think the future looks bright. I tell you, that solar road thing really looks fantastic. So I think it's just the little things that people do will build over time.
Who are you, sir?
Oh, I'm Tom Hughes. I'm with the HSC.
Thank you.
I'm Sam Bonasso with Mechanical Concrete. I think what we need to do is keep raising the awareness that's generated by this conference. The interaction.
And so positive things, just kind of stack them on top of one another, and so I think the future looks bright. I tell you, that solar road thing really looks fantastic. So I think it's just the little things that people do will build over time.
And who are you, sir?
Oh, I'm Tom Hughes. I'm with the HSC.
Thank you.
I'm Sam Bonasso with Mechanical Concrete. I think what we need to do is keep raising the awareness that's generated by this conference. The interaction here between coal mining, power companies, green enthusiasts and advocates, and people of very diverse and mostly competing situations needs to be continued, because the change that we all want to see will come from that dialogue and that awareness raising that is occurring at this conference. Now, I'm the guy that's taken the tires and come up with a new way to use waste tires by cutting the sidewalls out and making them the base of the roads. And notice that new glass road needs a base. It will still wear out tires. And 300 million waste tires are generated annually in the United States, one for every person. It's the most ubiquitous of all the industrial waste in society. So there is a demand for that kind of innovation, so come up with them. The best solution anybody's been able to come up with for tires is to burn them as fuel. 60% of those tires are burned. So that's my talk.
Let me jump in for one thing. As an example, many years ago, when I first became mayor, we just had a fire in the main downtown area, right in the main intersection in town. And 100 years celebration of the fire that we had, exactly 100 years before that, that created the fire department in Lewisburg, when they discovered that bucket brigades really were not going to take the whole downtown, were not going to be sufficient for the whole downtown block. With that was an opportunity for some change. It presented the opportunity to, what do we do in the main downtown section, very visible, right the downtown, the intersection of Route 60 and Route 219. And there was a discussion, well, doggone it, you know, parking is a problem in town. Why don't we just put it in a parking lot and we'll just have it there, and everybody who wants to, you know, get over to the barber shop and loaf and hang out, doggone it, they'll have a convenient place to park to do that. Well, the other option was to actually create a model green space in the corner, the most prominent block in town. So we went out and got grant monies and local foundations and the state and individuals, and we created a place with a play fountain and green, and we're building that out right now. That was several years ago. And when I asked people who had not been to town for, probably I hadn't seen them in 10 years, and they came back and they said, gosh, things have really changed here. And I said, well, what do you see different? They said, well, you know, that active area where people are engaging themselves, that place in the downtown area where people have benches, they have water, they have features, we have singing and performances there. What it has done is it created that space in the main downtown square for people to engage with each other. And that formed the core of a redevelopment of our downtown area. So that has led to more businesses downtown. We have 14 independently owned restaurants in the downtown area for a town of 3,800 people. There's no way you could have that if you didn't have a wonderful downtown area that people want to be in. So it's all incremental, but you have to step out the first time and think, well, what can we do this? We have an opportunity. So that is what I'm trying to get at. That's part of my takeaway, is to listen and to see how other people have stepped out to see what's possible, so that I can bring that back to my community. Did you have something you'd like to add, just with the question or not?
I'm Ted Shriver, architect, Williams & Shriver Architects. I guess my takeaway or challenge to everybody else here is just to pick one thing that was learned today and share that with somebody else. Share that at the dining room table. As I told those on my tour of the project at Eastwood Elementary School, the green hat tour yesterday, my wife kind of gets tired of me talking about it, but I think that's what it's going to take. This conference, taking it home, sharing the word, just doing one thing and then doing another thing another day. You know, in our own office, we have a lot of skylights, but we also have a lot of can lights. And I'm constantly going behind others, flipping off the can lights, because we have skylights there. I mean, you know, so there are just so many simple little things that can be done. As a design professional, you know, think back to the training that you had. Orientation of buildings is very simple, and that just kind of got put to the wayside several years ago. And I think doing those simple things of building orientation, respecting your neighbors as far as light pollution and water pollution, they're just simple things that can be done to save the resources and be good stewards of what's been given to us.
Oh, one more thing. We do need to do this again next year so that we're all reminded again how important it is, and I vote for January.
So to that end, tell at least 3 people that you know who didn't come to this conference, about this conference, that they should be here next year.
Matthew Bennett, Dovetail Solar and Wind. I think one of the challenges we have is we have so many existing buildings, and a lot of the wonderful design ideas and technologies can be easily incorporated into new buildings, and even though it's not necessarily always happening, that opportunity is there. I think the biggest challenge is dealing with our existing buildings and energy usage issues, and most people feel like, oh, we can't afford to put a solar system on, what can we do? Well, energy efficiency is really the first step, and that's something that, it's an opportunity that exists in almost every building, every structure. So I would encourage people to, look at that as the first step. Energy efficiency is generally the best way to invest with the quickest payback. And it's really the first step. You want to do that before you look at adding renewable energy or, taking extreme measures. So I think, looking at energy efficiency, and it is hard sometimes to do that, but there are energy auditors. There are definitely people available and to help with that process. And then once you've gone through that step, if you want to take the next step, look at renewable energy, look at solar, wind, microhydro, as a supplement to whatever your existing power is.
One thing that I really enjoy is, which we do a lot of building automation and controls. We do a lot of schools. Wyoming County is well known for their energy efficiency. Terry Tilley down there is a fantastic fella. I like partnering up with Terry Tilley and Wyoming County. And so they had a solar project, and we partnered up with them to help install that and install the controls on it. And it's just working with the kids, and this is something down in coal country, and we're bringing solar power down there and having kids down there whose dads or whatever may work in the mines, but having those kids actually working on the energy of tomorrow and seeing their faces light up, and they're extremely proud of what they've done. And so that's one thing that I really believe in is working with the youth and seeing them progress and seeing them learn that, hey, there is a better way. And that one film we saw, made that point that young people really do want to get into this, into sustainable and renewable energy.
One other quick point I'd like to make is that every time you do step out and you make some change and you accomplish something, a key part of it, and it has to be tied at the hip to it, is to celebrate that success. Basically, you have to take the time as part of it to basically gather people around and call attention to it, because that excitement that you generate by that small step forward is what creates all your next steps. That is part of the, I haven't been trained as a setup man on this, but that's part of what is going on at this conference, to be able to recognize successes, to recognize outstanding work, the display boards that you've had out front in terms of the great work that it's been done and needs to be recognized, whether you get a monogrammed hammer with Sarah's finest nail polish put on it to truly celebrate a golden hammer award or whatever. But as it's integral to this conference, but it also in your own communities, every time you have a successful project, I recommend that you really take some time to bring everybody together and celebrate it. Sarah, at this point we could either take questions or we could transition to the awards show, or whatever you would like to do.
Are there questions for any of the sponsors, exhibitors, municipal leaders up on stage?
So Michelle Connor with Almost Heaven Habitat for Humanity. So as vendors and sponsors and supporters of the event, you are few in number. So I'd also like to challenge you to invite friends to become sponsors and supporters of the event. But specifically, what do you think the opposition is, or maybe lack of interest of the other architectural firms, engineering firms, schools in this state, vendors and suppliers of energy efficient building materials? Why do you think they aren't here?
I think some people just don't really realize what all they can accomplish, what the technology is out there, what they can do. And I think it's when you can actually, in our case, when we can talk to someone about selling them a control system to make their building more energy efficient, are they how much money will it cost for one thing? Okay, they're not really interested because it's going to cost this much money, but you're going to save money, and your savings is where you get the money to actually pay for the loan or whatever that you have to take out to pay for that. And then once the loan is paid off, then you've got all of that 100% cash flow coming back into your organization. So I think some people are not really thinking about how much better off and they could be just by upgrading their systems.
There's a tremendous amount of momentum just to keep doing things the way they've always been done. And, you know, it takes a lot to push people off that track. And, you know, it takes education, but it takes people actually doing it. It takes real examples of it. And that's what's really encouraged me about coming here. Because I grew up in Ritchie County in the 70s, and I think, you know, I had a feeling that West Virginia was going to take a long time to adopt renewable technologies and so on. But I've just been amazed at how much has happened here and how so many of the people here are involved in renewable energy in one way or another. And that's really encouraging. So it's all relative as to what the starting point was. And considering you know, the momentum that we have in West Virginia with fossil fuels, it's pretty impressive where we have gotten at this point. So we have to keep in mind that, you know, it's all relative, and, you know, those changes that are happening are because people are doing things like this. So just, you know, keep at it one step at a time, and, you know, it's going to happen. But yeah, bringing in more supporters, more exhibitors, more sponsors will definitely help. And, you know, you have to start somewhere, and we've started, so just keep it up. We'll be here next year.
You know, I built my first solar heating system in 1974. It's been a long, long road. What I'd like to encourage is this kind of conference more, and we spend so much time talking to ourselves. You know, we get all the architects in a room and we talk among ourselves. We get all the contractors in a room and they talk among themselves. We get all the city officials in their room and they talk among themselves, but we don't talk to each other. We need to have some more cross-pollination here and technology transfer, and that's what I like so much about this conference.
In resistance, I can talk about this. As far as wastewater, there's a whole lot of resistance within the engineering community as a whole into doing something totally different. Engineering is very creative about taking what already exists and what you know and putting it together sometimes in new ways, but there's a big resistance. Now, in their favor on this, or why that might be, is you do have to understand there's a kind of an engineering mentality that if you were an engineer, a civil engineer, and you designed a bridge, and at some point that bridge fails, you need to be sure that you can stand on the witness stand and attest to the fact that you designed it using the kinds of practices that you were supposed to be using that were accepted. You used the kind of softwares in the design that had used it, that should have been used, and that you didn't use some totally new kind of thing that really wasn't justified. Otherwise, you're the person that's going to be going to have to stand to that. So within that, the engineers have this kind of a cultural mentality that they are the peoples that can be threatened by all of this, and they need to show that they're doing what is accepted and what is supposed to have been doing, because they're the ones that can stand to the liability. So I'm sensitive to all of that. But there is a resistance to doing something different. And so when you bring something totally different to the table, there is the difficulty in trying to get some believability to what you're trying to tell them. So within that, it just becomes my job to try to bridge those gaps in the ways that they can understand it and eventually accept it. Now, that's what has to be done. How to speed that one up, I don't know. If I did, then I'd be a real moneymaker for the company.
Well, as a former founder of an architectural engineering business and operator for many years, I can testify to what this gentleman just said. That's a very important point. But one of the things that engineers and architects are looking for is products to be validated. They want to know that what they're using works. And that's why it's important to get them here. And I've had an ongoing dialogue with Sarah about why there aren't more architects, engineers at this conference. So awareness, a tipping point, all those issues are things that are very important, and that's why it's important to get out and let people know about this conference. I don't think a lot of people in West Virginia know about this conference. Certainly the professional people don't know about it. And the more that you can spread the word, the better off you'll be. So all the architects and engineers that are here really need to tell your competitors about it. It's very important because they'll all be better off as a result.
You know, going green is not the tough guy thing to do. But deep down, all those tough guys love this stuff just as much as we do, but they're afraid to admit it. And it's not about saving the planet, so maybe you don't start the conversation off that way. It's really about saving ourselves.
I guess all of us in some ways have to be pushed to do some things. I also sit on the West Virginia State Fire Commission. One of the things that the Fire Commission does is promulgates rules for the building code and the fire code. This legislative session, the building code will hopefully be before the legislature to, again, hopefully move the 2003 energy code to the 2009 energy code. So I think next year's conference, hopefully it can be announced that will be in effect on July 1 of 2013, and there can be some sessions as to how to educate people to comply with the law. So as a part of that, it'll also be the ASHRAE 90.1, 2007. So I guess going back to the first question, the first thing, the thing that you could do in leaving this conference is talk to your legislators about how important it is to bring us up, not to the current code, but to the 2009 code.
I just wanted to say one thing that really got my guys interested, and Sarah, that was the class on Wednesday, the HVAC, EPA. That was a fantastic thing for my company to send people up here to go through that, to get that training. And I know through like Lunch and Learn programs that architectural firms, engineering firms, they're more likely to come out to things like that, especially if they've got PEs and they can get continuing credit for that. So anything like that you could add to the show, to the conference, I think would be an advantage for you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
It's kind of random. During this conference, I've just seen you with so many different great groups of people that are conscious and concerned about the environment. And I was curious, what is your guys' opinion about the feasibility in West Virginia of us beginning our own like green cooperatives, of us actually, you know, having like a wind cooperative or a solar cooperative, so the actual communities in West Virginia are not only owning their power, they're creating their own revenue and changing the way that we, you know, power our state.
We're probably the wrong people to ask about that. You need to talk to some of the other people that have been in this room. But that's where we want to go. We need to stop think of ourselves as a fossil fuel state. We need to think of ourselves as an energy state. We can still be the powerhouse of the East Coast, and we can continue that legacy. But we need to change our source. So this is an opportunity for us to lead rather than follow. And I'm hoping to see that happen.
Yeah, there are a lot of options that really will be coming to the surface shortly for doing community energy, community solar, wind, and so on, and that is seen as a huge need right now, because the incentive system that we have for renewable energy in this country is not really geared towards unique configurations. It's all tax credit based, and that really doesn't work for municipal systems. It doesn't work for nonprofits. So we are challenged in that the incentives that have been created politically don't work for everyone. They really only work for businesses and people who have tax liabilities. So that's one of the challenges. There are ways around that through leasing, through power purchase agreements. But what we really want to see is community solar, and there are some groups that were here this weekend who are starting that process. I believe there's some solar panels going up on the farmers market building here in Morgantown, and that effort, I think, will be the first step in bringing some of those opportunities for community solar together. But it can be done, certainly, and it's been done around the country with churches, with neighborhood groups. So I think you'll see that being possible really soon.
Obviously, I can't speak to energy and I can't speak to West Virginia, but what I can tell you is that when I go in and talk to people about wastewater and this new way of doing it and everything, I am automatically suspect because I sell that. And that's kind of what he meant over here, I believe, is the fact that you're asking the wrong people. Because of the fact that we represent something that's going to make money out of it, then in trying to forward the kind of thing that what you're talking about is my community or other communities here moving forward with something like in generating those things, trying to bring me into the conversation if there is already interest will do you a lot of good if I was an energy type company. If that interest is already there within the community and looking at something different, I can tell you about the way the wastewater will work. I can't come in there and generate that interest. I am automatically suspect, and the whole thing is, so it's like it falls back to a different group of people who see what's possible to try to generate those interests and get the ball rolling, to which people that are maybe represented up here can come in as assistants and be able to advise that. But you have to realize we can't be the driver in that change.
I think we're ready to close out the session. I appreciate everybody's questions and attention, and we'll move on to the next.
I'd like to give a big round of applause